Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the channel, and I was wrong about Activision. My goodness, I could not have been more wrong. Just 2 days ago, I said they were never going to speak about skill-based matchmaking again. It's been 2 months since they initially talked about it. I didn't think they were ever going to come out and say anything, and now here we are. Today, they posted a new blog called Call of Duty Matchmaking Intel, where in here, they talk about skill-based matchmaking as well as all the other factors of matchmaking. And let's just go ahead and jump into this. Let's see exactly what they have to say to us about all this and how they're going to justify skill-based matchmaking within the Call of Duty franchise. So first things first here, they show us the Call of Duty multiplayer matchmaking process. We have all these different tenets right here: connection, time to match, skill and performance, platform, voice chat, input device, recent maps and modes, as well as playlist diversity. Now in the blog post, I actually go through and describe these things a bit more in detail, though honestly, some of it is bullshit. And it's kind of funny. So they say right here that the #1 factor in matchmaking is connection. They say, as the community will attest, ping is king. Connection is the most critical and heavily weighed factor in the matchmaking process. And we all know that's bullshit. It is. I mean, we're not even going to jump into it. We just know that's bullshit. And then right here, actually my favorite part, it says #2, the time to match. This factor is the second most critical to the matchmaking process. We all want to spend time playing the game rather than waiting for matches to start. But do you guys remember just a couple of months ago, before Modern Warfare 3 came out, I posted this video right here, which shows me trying to get into a game of Modern Warfare 2, which at the time was the current COD, and in the background there, I jumped on a bunch of older CODs to see exactly how many older CODs I could get into in the time it takes me to find one single game of Modern Warfare 2, which again, at the time was the current COD, which had the most people on it. And I'm going to spoil this for you guys. I got into 6 different games of Team Deathmatch across 6 different Call of Duty titles in the time it took them to find the perfect skill-based matchmaking lobby for me within Modern Warfare 2. That is absurd. They say time to match is the second most critical aspect of their matchmaking process. Absolutely ridiculous. But going back here, we have this entire chart right here, and they go on to say playlist diversity, the number of playlists available for players to choose from. That's a big part of matchmaking, which I do think sometimes they have way too many playlists, which are going to spread the community out a little bit too thin. But regardless, moving on here, recent maps and modes. So when you search for a game, they're going to consider maps that you played recently on, as well as your mode preferences, which you can edit in the quick play settings. So if you've been playing a lot of Terminal, for example, they're going to try to not put you on Terminal. They're going to make it take a little bit longer for you to find a different lobby that maybe doesn't have Terminal in it. Next up, we have the input device, whether or not you're playing on controller or mouse and keyboard. You have your platform, which is going to be PC or console, whether or not you have voice chat enabled or disabled, which is interesting. I didn't really think that would be part of matchmaking, but apparently if your voice chat is enabled, they're going to try to get you in lobbies with other people that also like to talk. I don't know. But then the final part here, the part we're all interested in hearing about, skill/performance. This is used to give our players, a global community with a wide skill range, the opportunity to have an impact in every match. There you guys have it. So those are going to be all the tenets of the multiplayer matchmaking itself. In here, they go through talking about measuring time for matchmaking, measuring the connection for matchmaking. Basically, they say they try to put you to the closest server near you, and they have netcode that's going to try and make things a bit more smooth, even though it's not always true, because the COD servers are always seemingly taking a shit when it comes to things like packet burst. But here's the big thing. This is what everyone wants to hear about. Measuring skill for matchmaking. I'm just going to read this verbatim here. While skill is one of several factors in Call of Duty multiplayer matchmaking, we know the community wants more information on how this fits in the process. Skill is determined based on a player's overall performance, including kills, deaths, wins, losses, and more, including mode selection and recent matches as an overall metric across the multiplayer experiences. This is a fluid measurement that's consistently updating and reacting to your gameplay. That's what people mean when they talk about engagement optimized matchmaking, by the way. Skill is not only a factor in matchmaking players against appropriate enemies, but also when finding teammates. Call of Duty has historically considered player performance among other factors as part of our matchmaking process. Our work in this area dates back to as early as Call of Duty 4 Modern Warfare back in 2007. Now, I can speak on this in particular. We realized that there was something off about the matchmaking even back in the glory days of COD 4. How many of you remember this? I know we used to do it all the time, where we would get bored of being 10th Prestige, or we'd want to make a new account and see how high our KD could get. We got some new Microsoft points or whatever, you know, let's make a whole new Xbox account, or maybe we got a free month, including include in one of our games or something like that. So we would make a new account, see how high we can get our KD or whatever. But whenever you or your buddy had a new account, that person was always going to host the lobby, because if you had that brand new account hosting the lobby, they would throw you into matches of COD 4 with other people that are all like non-prestige, like level 20, level 30, level 40, and whatever. Essentially, that was probably the first form of reverse boosting back in the day. Whenever you had a fresh account, friend, or maybe you had a fresh account, if you hosted the lobby, even if your rest of your team was all 10th prestiges with great stats, as long as the new account was hosting, you could search for a match and usually get incredibly easy lobbies as far back as 2007. Now, going back to the blog post here, it says, skill is implemented across the video game industry, and we recognize that continuous refinement is required to deliver the best possible experience for our players. We use player performance to ensure that the disparity between the most skilled player in the lobby and the least skilled player in the lobby isn't so vast that players feel their match is a waste of time. So that is basically just saying skill-based matchmaking is there for a reason. The best player in the lobby and the worst player in the lobby are typically going to be roughly the same skill level, which is why all of your lobbies feel incredibly sweaty. It's right there in the blog post. But continuing on here, our data on player outcomes clearly indicates that the inclusion of skill in Call of Duty's multiplayer matchmaking process increases the variety of outcomes experienced by players of all skill levels. In other words, all players, regardless of skill level, are more likely to experience wins and losses more proportionately. So again, it's exactly what we said all these years. Skill-based matchmaking is there to make your lobby sweaty so that every single match has basically just 11 clones of you on your team and the other team, and the outcome of the game is really going to come down to who really wants it more. It's going to come down to basically, are two people on this team just dicking around doing challenges? Is this person over here practicing for ranked play? Like, that's really what it comes down to, because everybody is so close in terms of skill, and that's also why it's so damn frustrating if you're not a sweat lord, if you're just an above average player, but you're trying to get freaking, I don't know, bullet pen kills on your sniper rifle. You have to deal with every person in your lobby being sweaty while you're trying to do challenges on your sniper rifle, or you're trying to get double kills with your freaking RGL, or whatever it is you're trying to do. That's the most annoying part about grinding through Interstellar, is they expect you to carry, because the matchmaking is designed for you to be in sweaty lobbies pretty much no matter what, and they expect you to do well and carry your way into everything, despite the fact that everyone on the other team are using MCWs and you're over here trying to level up your pistols. It's frustrating. I don't understand why they don't even take that into consideration, but regardless, let's go ahead and continue on here. Our data shows that when lower skill players are consistently on the losing end, they are likely to quit matches in progress or stop playing altogether. This has an effect on the player pool. A smaller player pool means wait times for matches increase and connections may not be as strong as they should be. This can compound over time to create a spiral effect eventually when only high skill players remain because lower skill players have quit out of frustration. The result is an ecosystem that is worse overall for everyone. Oh my God, there's so much to unpack right here. Bad players don't like being bad, so they quit. And because they're quitting, we have to get them back into the game because we want them playing our game. We need them to buy our shit. So what we do is we rig the entire matchmaking system so that bad players only face bad players, good players only face good players, and that's about it. Did I paraphrase that well enough right there? They literally say that bad players that aren't having a good time are more likely to end up leaving. We experienced this. All of us did that played Call of Duty back in the day. And I'm not here. I mean, I kind of am here to be the old hat, but okay. Back when I knew I was bad at COD. I started playing. I got an Xbox for Christmas. My brother and I had to share an Xbox. We got one for Christmas, and we ended up getting Xbox Live eventually, and we were able to play with my best friend and my cousin, who already had Xboxes, and they were much better than me, but I didn't care. I was just happy to be playing an online game with my friends. Over time, however, I got better at COD because I wanted to get better at COD. How many times have I told the story? Call of Duty 4, my first ever COD. I remember specifically at one point I had a .7 7.7 KD, and I could not get that KD any higher. In fact, most of my friends had a negative KD in COD 4. It was like our first online shooter game. But that being said, every day I would check the leaderboards. I would see maybe my cousin went up 0.01 in his KD. I'm like, shit, he must have had a bunch of good matches here. I want to get better. I want to get better. Whenever we play together, you're kind of competing to see who can get the most score, who can get the most captures in a game of domination, who can get the most kills, who can get the least amount of deaths, who could have the biggest impact on the game. Knowing we were bad and not having the game completely catering to us made the game even more enjoyable, and it was fun to watch yourself progress as a player and get better as you learned more about the guns, as you learned more about the maps, as you learned how to play certain game modes, how the spawns were working. Once you got more of a grasp on the game, you could see yourself getting better, and that felt wonderful. Players don't have that anymore. With the matchmaking system as it currently is right now, if you're a bad player and you're going to quit because you're bad at the game, then suddenly you're only going to face people who are also shitty, and you're never going to get better, because what you do in those shitty lobbies is not actually going to make you better at the game. You're just going to basically be playing baby's first Call of Duty the entire time, and you're never going to get better. You're never going to feel that sense of progression, and guess what? You're going to eventually end up quitting anyway, because you could not take the time and effort to actually learn the game. You wanted the game to learn itself for you. And I can't even blame those players, because the matchmaking system is setting them up to fail. They don't even know that they're in these lower skill bracket lobbies. They don't even know that they're struggling with the game, or that they're not even really learning the game. They don't know. They have no clue. So maybe ignorance is bliss here. I'm not entirely sure, but I don't know about you guys, but I would not want to play a game where the game was actively insulting my intelligence by saying, no, you really suck. And so we're going to put you in these like little first grader lobbies. And we're going to put you in like the little special ed classes pretty much of COD, as compared to just throwing you into the general matchmaking pool, which is what we had back in the day. And in that matchmaking pool, you saw people from every aspect of the entire spectrum. You know what I mean? You had like the really good players. You had like the dads just getting off work with the kids screaming in the background. You had the kids that just got off of school, and everything else in between. Everyone from all kinds of walks of life all entered that lobby based solely on connection. And then once you were there, may the better man win, may the better team win. And the more you played, the better you got. And eventually you become that person that has an impact on the game, as compared to the game making impacts for you. Going back to the freaking blog post, they say they want every player in the lobby to feel like they're having an impact on the game. You're not having an impact if you don't know what you're doing. Like the game is making the impact for you. You know what I mean? But just continuing on, game data indicates that having some limitations on the disparity of skill across players in the match makes for a healthier ecosystem. We also understand that many high skill players want more variety of experience. Thank you. Yeah, that's exactly the problem here, but often feel like they only get the quote sweatiest of lobbies. We've heard that feedback clearly, and will continue to test and actively explore ways to mitigate this concern. How are they going to mitigate it without revamping the entire system? We just read like verbatim there from the blog post that they make the matches sweaty intentionally because they want the highest skill player in the lobby and the lowest skill player in the lobby to be about the same level. So if that's always going to be the case, then how are you going to eliminate the feeling that all of your lobbies are sweaty? And more importantly, how are you going to eliminate the feeling that every match basically feels the same? Right? There's not really a lot of variety when you play COD, despite the fact that we have like 150 some odd guns here in Modern Warfare 3. I see about 2 of them, give or take, you know. Skins are actually a bit more variety. I see people running around with a bunch of different skins, but in terms of the guns, like every time I die, I can just say in my head what gun it was, and I look up at that little kill feed indicator or whatever in the top right to show you how many bullets it took to kill you. And I'm like, yep, there it is. I was getting hit by an MCW and a BAS-B and occasionally the Rival 9. That's about it. Like those are like the 3 guns you end up ever seeing. How are they ever going to fix the entire matchmaking feeling that every match feels the same, that all of your lobbies feel sweaty, when right there in the blog post they told us that they intentionally make things this way because the poor bad players, they're gonna quit if they're not having fun. They should be able just to hop on, not even know what the map is, not even know the gun, and just start dropping AC-130s. That's what they want to do, but they can't. So we have to put them in a little baby bracket over here, and then we're gonna put all the good people in lobbies over here, and then everyone's gonna suffer as a result. It's frustrating, man. It is very, very frustrating. frustrating. In the blog post here, they also went on to say they're going to be talking about this more in the future. They're going to be talking about ranked play matchmaking as well as Warzone matchmaking in the future, but they also went through and answered some questions from the community, which I think is actually pretty interesting. So here we see, does Call of Duty consider player engagement, as in time played, as a factor in matchmaking? Where they say, we do not consider how often or how much you play when determining matchmaking. So there you guys have it. It does not matter if you play like all day every day or if you play once a week or whatever. Apparently that is not part of the matchmaking algorithm. Next up, does the Call of Duty matchmaking process impact any in-game elements such as hit registration, player visibility, aim assist, damage, or etc.? No, our matchmaking process does not impact gameplay elements. That's what they're saying. I've heard a lot of people say like skill-based aim assist, skill-based damage, and stuff like that. Sometimes players aren't as visible. They're claiming no. Next up we have, does spending money on Call of Duty content such as bundles, battle pass, or black cell change how players are matched? They say money does not in any way, shape, or form factor into matchmaking. Weren't there patents a couple years ago where they always say that these are just exploratory patents, therefore they were never actually implemented, but there literally was a patent that came out a couple of years ago where I think, what they call them, prestigious players, something like that, somebody that bought something expensive from the shop, the patent said that those people would be put into what they consider to be easier lobbies so that they can dominate those lobbies with the things that they purchase, and then the people in the lobby will see that really cool skin or that really cool blueprint and think to themselves, if I bought that, I'd probably be as good as that person and I can dominate lobbies. That was a patent which apparently was only exploratory, and maybe it was being used in things outside of Call of Duty because it was filed by Activision, but Activision does have many more games than just COD. You know, regardless, they say money has no factor into matchmaking. I don't know about that one. Next up here's a big one. Does Call of Duty use bots in multiplayer matchmaking? And the Call of Duty team says Call of Duty multiplayer does not use bots as part of the general matchmaking process. If this changes in the future, we will inform the community. So think about that, ladies and gentlemen. Bots may be coming to COD in the future. We had the leaks of rumors they were going to be coming to Warzone back before Modern Warfare 3 came out, but I don't believe that's happened yet either, so that kind of closes the book on that one. Do partners or content creators get special consideration in matchmaking? No, we do not change the matchmaking process based on who owns the account. In specific cases, such as events like Call of Duty Next, we may be required to customize how lobbies are formed. However, these events usually take place in private matches and do not impact general matchmaking. Here's a really good one. I don't want to read every single one of these, but have you ever tested removing skill as a consideration from matchmaking? And they go on to say, we have run tests over the years to determine if removing skill as a consideration for matchmaking makes sense. We will continue to launch these tests periodically. To date, the data remains consistent with what we have detailed above. Players tend to quit matches or stop playing if they're getting blown out, resulting in a negative overall experience for all players in the lobby and the general player population. We purposely do not disclose when these tests occur because it may impact feedback or the data that we see during these tests. So there you guys have it. They do test out removing skill-based matchmaking essentially, but we don't know when it is, but I think we can tell. There's times, especially during those free community weeks where like the game is free and they have those playlists where people can play for free for a weekend or whatever. During those times especially, it really seems like skill-based matchmaking gets turned off. And finally, have you considered removing skill from matchmaking in specific general multiplayer game modes? That's interesting. So like getting rid of skill-based matchmaking only in Search and Destroy or something? We have considered this in the past and we will continue to examine if this idea makes sense as part of an experimental playlist or in specific modes. We have nothing to announce on that front today. I think the war game mode in general doesn't really have much skill-based matchmaking. And I also think that in game modes like Ground War, like if you're talking like 32 on 32, Ground War, Invasion, whatever, it also seems like skill-based matchmaking kind of gets turned off in those game modes as well. But in the normal 6v6 playlist, it kind of seems like matchmaking is always cranked up to infinity. Ladies and gentlemen, that is basically the long and the short of the blog post today. I'll put a link to it down there in the description if you guys want to read it all for yourselves. I mean, there's things in here that I didn't cover, but most of it is just random bullshit I don't really care to talk about as much. It's just kind of like going over how connectivity works and something called the delta ping and things like that. It's really nothing that you should really pay too much attention to. The big important things I covered here, and it just goes to show that all the theories that we've had over all these years are pretty much confirmed now. Skill-based matchmaking is there to protect bad players, because bad players, if they're not immediately good at the game, then they're going to quit. The same way, if you're a child and you try picking up the guitar for the first time and you think, man, this is harder than I thought, and then you quit. Basically what they did, instead of like having them get good at the guitar, Activision instead just gives them a ukulele and says, have fun with that. Basically, that is the long and the short of it. They want to protect the bad players in COD, and as such, every single lobby, give or take, is going to have the best player in the lobby be about the same as the worst player in the lobby, which causes everything to feel sweaty basically all of the time, despite the fact that they're talking out of both sides of their mouth when they say that they don't like the feedback that people think they're always in sweaty lobbies 24/7, and they're going to look to try to mitigate that. Well, how are you going to mitigate it? Because you just told us that that was basically the entire crux of your entire matchmaking system, is making sure every lobby is so focused on skill that nothing else really matters. They go through the whole matchmaking chart right here, talking about playlist diversity and time to match and all that. Basically, all of these things here today all get broken down to, we work on connection. We want you to have a good connection, but most importantly, we want you to have a sweaty lobby all the time. We don't want you to relax when you play COD. We want to make sure that the matchmaking algorithm is having more of a factor in the outcome of your game than your own input as a player, despite the fact in the blog post they want the input of the player to be paramount. Like, again, they're talking out of both sides of their mouth when it comes to so many different aspects of this. It's honestly pretty disgusting to read through, but at least at the end of the day, they finally started to talk about it. They finally acknowledged it, and yeah. Wow, I didn't really think they were ever going to do this, but they did, and it's pretty much everything that we thought was happening behind the scenes is happening behind the scenes, although they did take the time to say things such as skill-based aim assist or skill-based damage and stuff like that do not exist. Apparently, the amount of money you spend in the shop does not matter. Apparently, there are not bots in the multiplayer. You know, they went through and talked about some of that stuff, which I will say, I'm happy that they acknowledged so many things here in the blog post. I just wish the news were better, but I suppose it was also a bit naive for me to think that they were ever going to change matchmaking or anything like that. Like, basically all they did here is confirm everything that we already thought about the matchmaking process in COD. So I guess I can't be upset. I'm happy they talked about it. I just don't agree with it. I think they contradicted themselves quite often throughout this entire blog post, and they said they're going to be testing out matchmaking and trying to figure out ways to try to make it so your lobbies don't always feel sweaty, but I don't know how they're going to do that if it goes against the entire tenets of how matchmaking is designed in the first place. So we'll see. We shall see, ladies and gentlemen. But for right now, that's it for this video. Let me know your thoughts and feedback on all of this news down there in the comments. It was a lot to take in, I know, but let me know about that down there in the comments. Thank you all so much for listening, and I hope you guys all have a wonderful day.